Good afternoon. A very warm welcome back. Good to see you, and thank you for those of you who've stayed the distance. We are small but perfectly formed. But I also want to welcome our online audience as well. That's connecting from all over Africa and different parts of Europe. So just a few words of introduction to this, because when we were thinking about this summit. Much of the debate, and like you've heard today, has been about East or West. And it's never really thought about is that why would you not go south and think differently about Africa? Why not think differently about Africa? And not only in terms of, because through the prism of aid or wanting to give a hand up, but actually genuinely thinking about the potential Africa presents as being a space partner for Europe. Genuinely thinking through about how space can be the lever of building a different kind of economy, bridge and relationship, technology transfer, knowledge transfer is vast, but we don't think that. Most of our politicians are perhaps not still out of the, let's say, the lens of aid or putting a hand out there for help, which I'm being perhaps unfair to a lot of the more progressive commissioners and politicians we have now who are working on the Africa-EU relationship. But in the main, still there is a tendency of an aid mentality rather than a partner, collaborative, reciprocity, etc., mutuality tone and arrangement in the mindset, if you like. And so that's why we at Friends decided, if as I said at the beginning of this summit, that this was meant to be an alternative for us. And the way we could do that is actually to look south rather than look classically to East and West. And that's why we're really pleased that we've been able to partner with our sister organisation, the Africa-Europe Foundation. And so we're really pleased that we're able to bring on side a very significant partner, a newly birthed organisation that's doing some really amazing things around a whole range of policy areas, from digital through to agriculture, mobility, finance, creating a women's leadership network, etc., and so forth. So they've powered quite significantly in a very short period of time. If you don't know about the Africa-Europe Foundation, if you do, if you want to learn more, go to our website. They have a dedicated page, and you can learn so much more about what the amazing things they've been doing. But we're really pleased that they partnered with us, as I said, as a sister organisation, to really think about this big question. And so we were planning to have our fellow. We have a series of fellows that lead on streams of activity in the Africa-Europe Foundation. And one of them, Yusuf Trevelyan, is our digital fellow, or senior fellow on digital, who unfortunately, because of health reasons, can't be here. So what we're going to do is just his words will be spoken through our absolutely fabulous Josephine, who works on space and digital matters in particular, and works with the Africa-Europe Foundation. So a few words from you in relation to what he wanted to communicate, what Mr. Trevelyan wanted to communicate, and then back over to me, and I'll get through the speakers and into a conversation. Thanks a lot, Josephine.
Thank you so much, Dharmendra. Thank you, everyone. So I will be conveying Yusuf's words and very quickly. So Yusuf wanted to say that in recent years, many countries on the African continent have woken up to the potential and usefulness of space technology. According to the United Nations Office for Outer Space, the African space sector is currently estimated at over $7 billion and is projected to exceed 10 billion by 2024. This rapid growth has been catalyzed by a combination of public and private sector spending, and African decision makers have begun to realize that space technology has many applications which can be leveraged to solve some of the continent's most pressing challenges. Essentially, digital-led innovation relying on space data could be utilized to improve food security, natural disasters management, aviation infrastructure, for instance, but also health, climate change, etc. And at the Africa-Europe Foundation, this is a clear area of partnership for us. And this is something that we have started working on, and we look forward to working on in the months and the years to come. Thank you so much, Dharmendra. Passing on to you.
Josephine, thank you so much for being so brief. because I know that Josephine would probably want to say a lot more to communicate the kind of the case and the opportunity. But you've just, you've cut to the chase, and that's really helpful. Just some data points I think are just helpful to frame this conversation. And I'm really pleased to people who've, our team that's provided this briefing. Less than half of Africa has access to the internet. Less than half of Africa has access to the internet. Imagine that geographically, mentally, in terms of opportunity and scale, right? Then the other point that basically so when you think of the combined space budgets of African countries, it makes up to less than 1% of the world's budget for space. Tiny. When you think of the scale and the opportunity, it's less than 1% of the world's budget for space. So it's quite significant that, we have those two dimensions when you think about capacity, access, but also investment. And imagine if you were to reframe the narrative of partnership between Africa and Europe into one of investment and opportunity, what might come about, especially in this nascent field of space, digitalization of Africa, and the kinds of relationships that could be created. And for that purpose, we have a range of really interesting speakers for you to be able to think about this relationship from various vantage points. And then we'll open up the discussion with all of you and our virtual friends. So we have a couple of apologies. So Tidiane, who's our science expert from the African Union Commission, unfortunately can't make it either. It was to do with time differences and being in a different place and not being able to access. So Olayinka, I'm so pleased I'm going to call you first, despite saying that I was going to call you secondly. So thank you for joining us. I hope you can hear us. You've frozen a little bit on screen. Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really pleased that you could be with us. You're the Chief Scientist, National Space Research and Development Agency of Nigeria. You are founder and national coordinator of Astronomers Without Borders, Nigeria. So, you come with some weight and experience here. Tell us, would you, in terms of what kind of, so my question's twofold. Something about how is your work contributing to a stronger and better equipped Africa Space Agency, right? And then the second point was, what are you doing domestically in Nigeria that could be scaled up across Africa? We know that Nigeria is going to be the most populous country in the world in the next 10 years. Can you just, this is what I mean, you have to think, don't you, about those numbers of access and everything? And you'll overshoot China and India. And that's phenomenal. Most people don't kind of make sense of that. So firstly, what are you doing to make sure that the agency, African agency, space agency, can be supported, embedded, and underpinned? But what is it you're doing in Nigeria that could be scaled across Africa? Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Olayinka, as you've rightly introduced. I'm a Chief Scientific Officer with the Nigerian Space Agency. So presently Nigerian Space Agency is the pioneer space agency in Africa. It started in 1999, so that's 23 years ago. So the agency has been involved in a large number of different projects and initiatives that I think could be scaled up to other African countries. For example, there's the issue of capacity building, as we mostly know that the capacity in the space sector in Africa is a little bit, not at par with what you have in Europe, for example, and in the US. So what the agency is doing is capacity building in terms of equipping the human resource aspect of the space agency in Nigeria, and also to see that they start this from a bottom approach where you have a group of young people, fresh out of school guys around Nigeria who are in the space industry, in the space agency. And the agency is trying to equip them more to build capacity in these people so that they can be able to take on bigger and larger and more, more impactful projects than they already do. So I think this is something that other African space agencies can also emulate, because in Africa, you have this huge population, like you mentioned. Nigeria has over 200 million people, and the projections are such that there's a ready market for the space industry. But unfortunately, most space agencies in Africa, the space industry generally in Africa has been dependent on government. They are mostly public funded, and so there's little or no private sector investment in the space agency, in the space industry in Africa, in Nigeria. So the leadership of the space agency is trying to get private organizations, private sectors to come into the space industry to invest, because you have the ready market in terms of internet services, satellite communications, telephony, and all those aspects of the space industry that the private sector can leverage on. The private investors can come on board to make the industry bigger and better in Africa.
In terms of the scope of the development you see ahead of you, you say you are one of the first, you're the pioneering agency in Africa. When you look at the development around you, are you optimistic about the private sector investment you're likely to get? Will you have to look out with Africa for that?
Okay, so I think we have to look out of Africa for that, because like we all know, most African countries are very poor. And then when you look at the budget of most of these countries, they are so small in terms, in comparison with other developed nations. So I think the government alone, the government of African countries, would not be able to get the right amount of investment that can take the space industry to the next level in Africa. And so, yes, the agency, for example, in Nigeria is looking towards private public partnership. They're looking at collaboration with bigger agencies, with bigger organizations. Yes, so that is what I think will help to develop the space sector in Africa, to at least be able to meet up with the demand, because the market is very huge and the population is huge. So so we need that outside investment and partnership to make that work.
So far, who's been interested in you from the outside? So have you had stuff from US? Have you had stuff from Europe or the East? Give us a sense of whether you've had success from, let's say, outside of Africa in generating support for your work in Nigeria.
Yes, so I would say the United Kingdom, for example, one of Nigeria's satellites was launched by Surrey Satellite Limited in the UK. Another was launched by the Great Wall of China, So I think in terms of partnership, Europe, China, and America have been the countries that have been involved in some sort of partnership and collaboration with Nigeria. Yeah. So,
okay.
And then the agency, has been doing a lot of collaboration with Europe, America, and Asia.
Okay. I mean, this is not for question now, because I want you to think about this, and we'll come back to you in the broader conversation. We've just been speaking about how to make space matter all day, right? This is and a part of this is about the relationship between Africa and EU. What I'd like you to think about is that what kind of collaboration would you like with the European Space Agency? What kind of approach of investment would you like from the European Commission? Are two things I'd like you to think about, and then we'll come back to in a moment. But on that note, I'm going to go to the European Commission. We have Cecilia Donati from the R&D, Director-General for International Partnerships. Cecilia, what have you been doing in this space? So I'm going to be really direct. You know, what have you been doing in this space? So where do you find yourself in terms of the kind of support relationship R&D activities? And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dharmendra.
Just bring it over closer to you. You can bend it, yeah.
Can you hear me better now, maybe? Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for having us here today. I'm coming from DG INPA, International Partnership, who is not the one leading space policy within the EU. So this is DG DEFIS. So whatever we're doing, we're looking at everything that is outside the EU, and we are trying to support our partner DGs in relaying and conveying their messages outside, as I said, the EU. But I think it's important to start with a very quick overview of the policy context, so we all get a good understanding of where we are right now. And the main communication that we refer to in our latest intervention and in the future intervention is the Global Gateway, which is our European global connectivity strategy, which aims at boost smart, clean, and secure links in digital, energy, transport, as well as strengthen health, education, and research system throughout partnership across the world. So digitalization is, together with the Green Deal agenda, a top priority under the Global Gateway. And one of the objectives of the Global Gateway is indeed to promote EU services and access like Copernicus and Galileo in partner countries. We all know very well how space-based services are nowadays a sine qua non for tackling today's major societal challenges. Earth observation is a valuable tool in the fight against climate change and environmental degradation, and for increasing food security. We heard it just before. It is also an enabler to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Space data and application can help SMEs and startups to develop innovation solutions and enable policymakers to take action and formulate sound and evidence-based policies. In a data-driven economy, Earth observation data and services are a game changer to address environmental and societal challenges. An holistic and integrated approach is necessary if we are to achieve the goals set in the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Therefore, it has become more and more clear how digital technology are key for a transition to a green economy. And through digital partnership, the EU seeks to develop fair and inclusive digital transformation. And here is our entry door for space and Earth observation cooperation. But now we need to look at our partner objective, of course. So the African leaders and institutions share their commitment to advance together in this domain, knowing that geospatial data carry a powerful geopolitical weight and offer numerous economic opportunities. This message was strongly reinforced by the outcome of the last African Union-European Union Summit, where space was announced as being the focus of one of the upcoming flagships. But maybe we will touch upon this later on. As I was mentioning, the EU proposed strategy with Africa put emphasis on space, data, and digitalization. We heard about the digital divide just before, and we need to tackle it in order to bring benefit to the ground. Our goals are ambitious, and we can achieve them only in cooperation with our partners. All these digital solutions are only useful if designed and implemented together with the right local partners, leading to a sustainable uptake of space-based information and services. So the question is now, how do we get there? How do we do it? So dialogue, Team Europe approach, understanding partners' countries' needs, raising awareness, investing in skills and training, support private sector cooperation. These are just a few pillars for our regional national cooperation. Finally, Yet, importantly, we're not starting from scratch. But the EU-Africa cooperation is already a reality. So let me just quickly go through. So first, we have a bilateral agreement with the African Union to share data gathered by the Copernicus program using high bandwidth hub-to-hub network connection. This will foster the exchange of Earth observation data between Europe and Africa. This data can be used to develop tools to monitor the environment, crops, water bodies, coastal ecosystem, as well as for disaster management, among many other application areas. Second, the Global Monitoring for Environment Security, GMES, and Africa is a 50 million project funded by the Pan-Africa program and focuses on information service value chain, from access to data, to process data, tailor-made services, tailor-made to user needs, in this case Africa, to training people and policy and institutional framework. It's also involved a private sector component, encouraging partnership between private sector. At African continental level, we found CLIMSA program. It is also about strengthening the capacity of Africa regional climate centers to convert data into user-friendly information. It can also help countries and regions to prepare for possible disease outbreak and make strategic decisions on water and energy infrastructure. Speaking about biodiversity, we monitor protected area through BioPAMA project and support specialized forest observation in Central Africa and East Africa. These are just examples to tell about partnership, ownership, and life-changing application. Of course, the EU-Africa space cooperation also goes beyond Earth observation, as we also have other partner programs, and includes projects around satellite use, so AGNOS, for regulating air traffic in close cooperation with the Agency for Safety of Air Navigation in Africa, ASECNA. To conclude, looking at the future, space-based information and services as a truly global digital tool can certainly be instrumental in achieving the goal of the Global Gateway, as well as supporting our partner meeting their objective. But of course, this is not a unilateral process, but we need to combine the resource and expertise developed here in the EU with the local knowledge, both in terms of user needs and user objective, in order to build sustainable and long-lasting partnership. Bringing coherence as well as an integrated approach in our current axis of intervention. So, in a nutshell, partnership, user-centric, and big data as an enabler for sustainable growth. These are the contexts where we are trying to build partnership with African counterparts.
Excellent. It'd be good to know where those of you who are online and those of our people who are speaking also is that what does the kind of African space community make of this? It'd be really good to know. And I suppose this is all new at the moment. And, as we speak, and this is the year in which the Africa Space Agency will become operational. As I understand it, this is part of the Pan-African program where you've committed just over 82 million euros. So not a lot of money, but significant in terms of what's possible. I suppose what occurs to me in my mind is that, are you doing any kind of knowledge expertise transfer that helps some of the, matching, let's say, the Portuguese space chief with someone in Europe, for example, to be able to think about learning, sharing experiences? Is that on the agenda? I know that's not your territory per se, but are you aware of it at all?
Thank you very much. I think it's a very interesting question because we are really looking into what is possible in the future right now after the announcement of the flagship. At political level, this was declared and approved by everyone. And now we were looking with our partners, what can we put inside of this flagship in terms of concrete action? And we are thinking about having one pillar of this famous flagship around the space dialogue. As it was also mentioned in the Lisbon Manifesto in June 2021, there is a need to set up a framework of cooperation at institutional level in order to support the capacity transfer as you rightly pointed out. So, of course, in this, we are thinking about the European Space Agency as our partner, but of course, the role of the different national agencies, they will play a role, I believe, because they do have enormous capacity and to transfer to our counterpart. But it's in the making, so I don't have any tangible action to announce right now, neither program set in place. We need also to speak with our partner and understand also where their expectation and how can we come and if we can fit in their expectation with our ideas. And we are at the very beginning of the process.
No, indeed, but perhaps that's an idea we've given birth to here in this summit. But we'll find out. There's a chap, Tidiane was good, who couldn't make it, I believe can now, and has joined us. No? I've got the wrong name, I do apologize.
Thank you, Dharmendra. Meshack, he's number 2, is joining in his stead very kindly.
Ah, that's good. So, but it's the same outfit, if you like. It's from the African Union Commission. And I can't, is he, are you online, Meshack?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay.
Look at that, brilliantly. You are brilliantly branded, Meshack. It's great. Oh, I didn't mean to shy you away. Ah, you're behind me. Great. I can see you now. Lovely. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
Thank you so much. And I apologize that my boss couldn't make it at the last minute. A couple of things to handle on his side. But if you allow, I have a quick presentation. I don't know how many minutes you give me, a moderator.
Sure. But can I ask the question first? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Do I make a presentation, or I'm supposed to listen into the questions?
No, let me help. Let me help. We really want to hear from you, right? We really do. And what we want to know is, set out what you think. You know, this space agency has been planning for over 6 years, I believe, right? And now it becomes operational this year. Give us a flavor of what the vision is for the Africa Space Agency, and what you see are some of what you might think might be the flagship projects for a brand new space agency in Africa. I hope that's
okay, great.
With what you can.
So we have, as the moderator says, in the African Union Commission, which is the Secretariat of the African Union, it brings together all the 55 member states of the continent. And the aim of it is to implement the decisions that normally the heads of state and government usually make at the end of the year or the beginning of the year or otherwise. And we have been having this discussion going on about having an African space program. And it started back in 2012 when the ministers convened and said that we need to look into the space aspect. And the outcome of that was that, you know, we need a coordinated African space program, which we were not sure at that time what it would be. And the starting point was to create a working group from different member states of the continent. We called it the AU Space Working Group, and it developed what we call the African Space Policy and the African Space Strategy over the period of 4 years. And after 4 years, what happened is that the document was adopted, the strategy, the policy, and the policy and the strategy are outlined in their goals and principles. And the two main goals are to coordinate, to harmonize the space activities, and to create an environment that allows whether the private sector or the public sector to thrive in the space economy. And the second one is to provide that regulatory environment that allows Africa to develop its own space programs while at the same time addressing the needs that the continent have, environmental, socio-economical, political, or otherwise. And so in 2016, the documents were adopted, and therefore that acted as a formal point of confirmation of the African space program. But then we had to proceed further and create an institution that is responsible for its implementation. We created the African Space Agency as a special organ of the African Union, meaning that it's an African-led organization that is coming out of the African Union, and therefore it has several kind of implications. One of them being that each and every member of the African Union is a member of the African Space Agency, and therefore we are leaving no one behind. And the other one is that the budget of the African Space Agency also comes from the African Union TT, which is the contribution of the member states So these are the 2 points. We formalized that in 2017 through a statute, which is the main governance structure. And therefore, the Space Agency has been decided to be hosted in Egypt, but all the member states are involved in the activities and in the implementation.
Great. And whoops, you are with us still. You can't hear me. But if you were to, I know it's difficult for you because you're stepping in at the last minute. Can you give us an idea of the, if there's already been thinking about the kind of the big thing that this new agency will lead with? What's the first thing it will do, for example, if it's a project or an initiative of some sorts, just to give us an idea of what's in the pipeline? Obviously, Egypt's interesting. It's obviously going to be hosting the next COP, etc. And so it'd be interesting to know if there's any alliances there in that regard.
Yeah, so I did mention that the African space strategy is focusing on 4 main domains. One of them is the Earth observation. The second one is satellite communication. Then the other one is navigation and positioning and timing element. And then we have astronomy and space sciences. So out of these 4 domains, we will have programs coming out of them. And like you said, in a priority manner of things, because we cannot jump into all of them at the same time. Well, we have been doing some basic studies, which we call the foundational or the baseline studies, to inform us on the gaps and the needs. And we did conclude another one recently, which is called the socioeconomic benefits of space activities or space services into the socioeconomic development of countries. And we got the preliminary report. And out of that, we will hand this over to the African Space Agency once the structure is put in place, so that they can prioritize on which program comes first and what kind of project needs to be implemented. As you know, for now, most of the projects that we are implementing at continental level are to do with Earth observation, but we don't neglect other domains like satellite communication or navigation or even astronomy. But we do have, strong feelings that with the impact that we are experiencing on the continent, probably the very first programs will be on Earth observation or satellite communication, if need be. But that's up to the African Space Agency leadership to decide based on the different studies that have been done at our level.
And Meshack, I promise I won't provide you any more pain after this last question, because I understand that you're stepping in. But it was a question that, or the issue that I raised earlier on. Are you aware of any initial discussions already, given it's a brand new agency being set up, to create any kind of knowledge exchange, mentoring, guiding, shadowing relationship with the European Space Agency or any of the chief executives of the individual member state space agencies?
Well, not at the African Space Agency level, but at the African Union Commission level, we have been implementing programs that are agreements between the European Commission and the African Union Commission. And an example of it is the GMES in Africa, which, as you know, came out from the Copernicus program. And this program is being implemented in all the countries of the continent. And we are focusing on management of natural resources, water resources, and marine and coastal areas management. So currently, as it is before the agency comes into maturity, we will still continue with this cooperation, commission to commission cooperation, and that cooperation brings the technical institutions of European Commission and other entities like European Space Agency into the project. So with GMS in Africa, we are working closely with European Space Agency. We are working with the Joint Research Center. We are also working closely with UMETSAT and many other entities that are on the technical side of Earth observation. And the meaning of that is that we are closely also looking at, not only Earth observation, but satellite communication and navigation. In navigation, we have been looking at, for example, the extension of the SBAS, which is the satellite-based augmentation system. We even have an organization on the continent called SatNav, which is actually formed by IGNOS, and we're looking forward to, bring all those issues or those areas that have been identified as potential areas for improvement within the African Space Program.
Great, thank you. And this is just not for you to answer to at all. I promise, as I said, I'll take you away from the pain of me asking you more questions. Just for the audience here and virtually, the budget distribution, right, for space by African country, let's at the moment, right, is quite interesting. So South Africa is by far the highest at 168 million. 168 million. Algeria is 100 million. Followed by Nigeria at 54, and then the others are like Egypt 40, Angola 30, and so forth, and the others are in the much lower digits. So it will be interesting to see whether that economic or financial distribution will actually change the historic ways in which things have been done in the Union and the Commission, or whether we'll see a different approach. But that's not for you to answer, because that's a really political question I'm asking. But I think it's quite telling, it's quite interesting who are the big players, and it is those big players that have been, I suppose, dominating social, economic policy and union matters over the years. So let's see how that fares in relation to space.
Well, if I can say something on that, we're very careful because we're not trying to discriminate some countries and moving on with others. We definitely know that different countries are at different levels of development or even establishing their own space programs. And the danger that we can get into is to, have some priority on some countries and leaving the others. As I said, the kitty of the African Space Agency comes from the African Union budget contribution, meaning that each and every country is definitely involved. And the slogan that we have is that we are leaving no one behind in this process. We know that we are dealing with those who are already spacefaring, and there are those countries that are starting themselves right now, and there are those who are just using the services or they don't have programs yet. But we are not discriminating any of them. The thing is, we need to move together in this course, because at every point of decision making, each of those categories of countries matter.
No, absolutely. It's no. I was only reflecting, and I wasn't meaning to challenge you. It's just that when you look at the distribution of, let's say, those who are a net contributor to the EU and those who are net recipients, there's a politics and a policy that plays out as a result, and we know that it's been ever thus. And I was just reflecting that, I hope the money contributions or the investments to date don't affect and shape the kinds of relationships and policies into the future. So, colleagues, I want to open it up to you're looking all very tired, I have to say. I wish I could give you a bit of cake or something sweet just to kind of wake you up, or a cold drink, but I have none of those three things. But we've opened the doors to make it a bit more lively, I hope. But anyone fancy asking a question? Interested in a question? Great.
Thank you so much, Dharmendra. I'm just going to represent the online audience who's also following closely. And I have a question from Elijah Theory, based in Lusaka. He is the director of the Center of Excellence on a number of topics. And his question is, how is the EU handling different interest groups on its members on specific African states, as it can either be the strong link or the weak link in the development of space science on the African continent?
Wow, that's a really toughie, and I definitely don't want to pass it to Cecilia, because that's a really horrible question. I will be really badly regarded as being evil moderator in person. But do you want to have a go at that?
I'm not sure I fully understood the question to start with.
Do you want to repeat it a little bit?
Maybe.
Because more about the kind of differences in relationships, so you don't get the same power dynamics. But how is the relationship being managed? Go on, Josephine.
Absolutely. So I think the first part of the question is, how is the EU handling different interest groups of its members on specific African states? So I think it's very much about the EU's members and their interests and relationships with other African states when it comes to space, and how can you have maybe a one approach when obviously you have different interests at hand. Apologies for
And that's
the
why,
question.
why don't you just have a go at it, even though you don't have to answer it in full, because it's an impossible question for you to answer. I know that.
I think it's very easy. It's not
Okay.
up to us, it's to the council to define. So,
Well done, Cecilia. You're going to become a senior civil servant very, very quickly. I can see it. I can just see it from that response. Thank you. Sorry, and I didn't catch the name. I do apologise to the gentleman online. Is that you're asking a very difficult question, which is an important one, but it's one that's never ever been resolved. It continues to play out. Look at just the relationship between France and Africa and North Africa, Germany, what it's doing, and a lot of it's about arms as well. Don't forget. So it's like herding. There's a very British phrase of herding cats. Which I shouldn't use. I don't think it translates onto the continent, but it's that impossible thing to do, because ultimately it's about politics and political behaviour and political decision making. But we have one of our European young leaders who'd like to have a go at answering. Can I have the microphone here, please? Oh, I thought. But do you want to respond to this issue? Okay. It's to Paul. He's helping me out, not moderate. It goes to Paul there, just there.
Hi. No, I'd like to ask our friend from the African Union Commission, has there been any discussion between the European Union and the African Union so far about this secure connectivity program? Because we've heard Commissioner Breton say that this could provide secure connectivity for the whole of the African, and internet access for the whole of the African continent. But I just wonder whether anybody's talked to the Africans about this.
So again, Meshack, I feel terribly cruel this afternoon, because you're having to deal with you're having to answer questions which your boss would answer. But do you have an answer to that, Meshack? Can you hear?
well, I think the leadership of the European Union that is present. I think that question came directly from them. Well, we do have two departments that are dealing with two different issues. When it comes to the internet services, is our sister department called Infrastructure and Energy, and we definitely need to talk to them to find out if there has been any commission or college-to-college engagement between their commissioner and the European commissioner responsible. It's not something that I can give a definite answer right away, but that's something that we need to undertake. If there has not been any discussion so far, we need to, I think we need to raise that through our channel.
And I'll tell you what we'll do also is make sure. Sorry?
Perhaps I could put the same question to Cecilia, since she's here.
I was afraid it was coming to me as well. Another one, very easy. It's the easy question afternoon today. Well, as you certainly know, the Secure Connectivity Program, it's in discussion again in the Council. So first of all, we need to reach this important milestone where a member state also will define what the program will look like and will have their view and their say on that. On our side, we are certainly trying to involve our partner country because we also believe on the potential of the Secure Connectivity Program. It's true that time-wise, we shouldn't be too rushy. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It will take some time for the constellation to be full up and running, but we see a strong potential indeed to reduce the digital divide as one of the different interventions in which we are working on. So certainly discussing with our partner countries or the African Union Commission, it's an important milestone that we always have to have as soon as possible in the development of any kind of program. Now is the time to really understand when is the most opportune moment to start discussion, whether it is on the implementation, on the governance, and then we enter a very detailed discussion about the different aspects that,
sure.
I would refrain for.
No, understood. Exactly. You have another question, do we, Josephine?
I do, from the online audience.
Uh-huh.
So Masami Onoda is asking, how strong is the component of sustainability in the African space strategy? Is there any debate on development versus sustainability, such as protection of the environment on Earth or in space? And what is the balance Africa seeks between development and sustainability interests?
Again, very, very, Meshack, I have to come back to you, but also, if we still have, I can't see you, Olayinka, if you're there, because you could give a Nigerian Space Agency perspective too. So first, Meshack, if you want to respond to that in terms of how much, how much of a green footprint is in the kind of, let's say, the DNA of the new agency.
Yeah, indeed, one of the goals of the space strategy is to, the policy itself, which is the overall guiding instrument, is to create a regulatory environment that ensures that Africa participates responsibly in the space domain, but also remains competitive, meaning that there's already a balance and check between development or developing of the technologies that we want to develop and the sustainability of space. And it goes further to say that within the regimes of the international community of space, meaning what has been agreed upon already under UN CUPOS and also applied to the African space context. So we do have that responsibility to ensure that we participate responsibly and we develop ourselves responsibly. Well, if you look at the contribution of the space debris today, for example, it's not most of it is not coming from the continent of Africa.
No.
And we actually feel more threatened because it means that the rules are getting tighter and tighter, and that is raising the barriers of entry into space. And if we don't develop our technologies quickly, that means that we'll be locked out of developing the space technology that we wish to. So again, that is to assure the audience that we do have that sense of responsibility of sustainability versus development.
No, thank you. And it's it's the same dynamic that, Africa is not the main culprit of carbon emissions, but it's suffering the most impact of it. And then therefore what will happen in terms of, climate refugees and emigration, etc. It's everyone's interest to actually invest wisely and in a more foresight manner in terms of what we do in terms of infrastructure and space technologies, especially low Earth observation, because that could tremendously help policy making and decision making at a local, regional, national level. So thank you for that. Olayinka, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, that's good.
Can you hear me?
I can. Can we ask you that question that we had from our online audience about, how much of a, sustainability factor is there in your operation?
Okay, thank you. So like Meshack said, Africa, we pretty much are following every rule that as outlined by the international communities and organizations. And back at home, there are policies being developed. There are agencies that are working towards realizing this. And also, like you rightly mentioned, Africa is not really the culprit here, but then we still, make sure the agencies still make sure to follow every rule at the international level.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on, but the one thing that I was just, thinking that those of you who are following the European Development Days, wouldn't it make sense that, in the engagement of the EDDs, especially I think that, I won't speak on behalf of the foundation, but I'm sure that some of the output of this, like the question that was asked about the dialogue between commission to commission, you can take up as a foundation, and you may have an answer to that already, but also I know that you'll be thinking deliberately about how does space feature in the Africa-Europe Foundation's work, but there's something about the fact that there are the development days, and I know there's an African-Europe ministerial on energy, etc. You made absolute sense that digital and space featured in that. Josephine?
Yeah, thanks, Dharmendra. There will actually be a number of debates on space and space observation during the European Development Days. We will be present in those debates, and we very much will look into picking up this topic very much through also the lens of sustainability, because obviously it makes absolute sense. Thanks.
Great, okay. Let's move on. Let's take a kind of expert and business. Why not? Absolutely. Do reintroduce yourself just
Yes,
for the sake.
this is Guillermo Anglada, space scientist from Institute for Space Sciences in Spain. So it's a question for several speakers. You've been talking about establishing connections between Commission or countries with other countries, but at university level, and what works very well is to have shared projects or student exchanges, for example. Is there any tool or something, for example, I can go to the Commission or the Global Gateway Program to go to a university and then establish a cooperation between departments, universities, research centers, without having to go through the governments, because then governments have agendas, research centers are a bit more popular, democratic in a sense, don't need to push for strange politics.
Okay. Guillaume, because I know what one of the speakers is going to say a little bit about, okay? I'm going to, because we know that Sékou is going to actually talk a little bit about this from his perspective. And so let's move to him in a moment, but it's a really good point. And it's that other point about how do you connect entrepreneurs from country to country without having to go via the governments and those national operations. Did you want to come in on that?
As you like.
Well, if you're comfortable with it, well, you're not going to pass it to the council.
I will be very quick, as
Go
always. Well, as in the Commission, we always like to make things very easy. This topic is not dealt by space, but another, which is Science, Technology and Innovation Department within DG INPA. There are several programs that look into cooperation between different university, and there are also ideas about establishing center of excellences, in Africa, where the science component and the exchange of scientists will be very important. So that will be more at that ground level rather than only institutional level.
That's good to hear. I'm glad I did bring you in. When's that going to go live? Okay.
Very soon.
Very soon. So that could be 6 months or 4 years, right?
No, we stay in a shorter time.
Okay, all right.
If I may.
Please do. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, Joaquin Fortuny from Joint Research Center, but there are a number. You can have a look to Cordis, and there are some tens of Horizon Europe projects, it's 2020, with African partners. That's
very complicated mechanisms and very
but there are specific calls that are targeting, and I think we invite partners from Africa, universities, research institutes, and some of them, I think they are doing some really good work, clearly.
Sure, thank you. But the thing is, I suppose, people, I suppose, you know yourself, the processes you have to abide by in the Commission are not sometimes as flexible and user-friendly, but that's not your fault. It's the risk factor and the risk appetite within the Commission. Over to you. Back to you, Josephine.
Thanks, Dharmendra. We also have a intervention online by Mr. Zhang of International Culture Exchange Center of China. And so it's a bit of an Asian perspective on this. And he's saying, as mentioned by former speaker, the connectivity is global. Here is the voice from an Asia and cultural perspective. What do you think about establishing a space civilization initiative? The idea is that it's important to initiate public opinion guidance to develop and operate space in a green, safe, and civilized manner globally and build a new pattern of human and cosmic culture. The Belt and Road Innovation Development Cooperation Fund of China International Culture Exchange Center is willing to jointly launch the Space Civilization Communication Fund with Europe and Africa and Asia. I hope it's an interesting proposition for you, and we stay available for further communication.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether you can hear me, Mr. Zhang. I'm very pleased you're online. We've had discussions with Mr. Zhang before. He was a very ambitious plan to really rethink relations between Asia and Europe and not necessarily focus on the politics, but the other opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. And a very interesting proposal that is indeed. But there will be, I think, I'm going to move to our speakers and they will perhaps reflect on this, that very important question that you raised, Mr. Zhang, and I'll also invite others who wish to react to it also. But I'm going to go to Dirk. Dirk, you've been very patient. You are, you're a Belgium outfit. You're a strategic advisor. You do a number of things in the kind of what we've discussed is like the grand value chain of space in terms of going from one end to the other. Can you describe a little bit about what you're doing in this arena, especially in relation to operating in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, I'm working for the past 30 years on and off on remote sensing and in Africa. First, just to say as well that I work for VITO. VITO is an independent international research organization that wants to accelerate the transition to a sustainable world. And we are active in clean tech, sustainable development, land use, including remote sensing. So about 200 people are working full-time on the remote sensing related aspects. Talking about business operations, I think when we talk about business, then there is something to be delivered, to be sold, products or services. There is a market, so there are providers and there are end users. And one should be aware of where and with which services and which clients we do work. And just to make it simple, we have this entire value chain that probably most of you know, or maybe you don't know it, but the remote sensing or Earth observation or space technology at large follows a certain value chain. To make it simple, there is the hardware manufacturers that develop launchers, satellites, instruments. They launch a satellite. Once it's operation, when it's in the air, then it's transmitting its data, bits and bytes to the Earth. There is a lot of hardware equipment. There is big satellite receivers. You have data. The data have to be translated. You have the geo corrections, you have the atmospheric correction, etc., etc. And then you come up with a product which has to be archived and to be distributed, to be uptaken by the end user. So this entire chain is quite complex, and nobody is active in the entire chain. And there's various players there, and for sure there's a place for the private sector, but there's a place as well for the public sector, depending where you are. And as well, one always has to ask the question, for whom are we working? Who is the final beneficiary? And normally the final beneficiary has to pay for his service or for his product. But as well, who is the shareholder of the activity? Who is sponsoring the activity? And there are differences between the public funded agencies or the private capital agencies and so on. So, but for sure, there is a role for both the public sector and the private sector. When it comes to Africa, my experience, but as a research center developing new technologies in the remote sensing field, we work both for the private sector as for the public sector. But I have to be honest that there's more, we're working more for the public sector. Public, I mean the European Commission, the European Space Agency through its various programs, but we do work as well for example, agricultural companies working with palm trees, coconut plantations, and so on. Traditionally, when it comes to developing services, then people think that it's more on developing the hardware technology. So each country or each organization wants to have its own satellite, and that's the main ambition. But we should not forget the importance of the added value. And then I come to the point, how can we improve the collaboration between Europe and Africa? I think within this setting of fully understanding the entire value chain, first we have to make sure what is the real need that we want to solve. Which solution has to be delivered? It could be a new instrument, but it could be as well a new algorithm to make the transition between a chlorophyll index and, for example, an agricultural yield number. So first, what is the real need? Secondly, we should increase the awareness on the added value of the space technology and the space solutions. our experience is that there was, in the past, there was some overselling of what space could offer. And this has done a lot of harm as well. We should be correct and to be very clear what we can offer and what we can't offer. Number 3, I want to say is that we should create a correct environment. It's not up to one company to develop something and to deliver it or put it somewhere. We should create a correct environment for the user uptake, meaning that there should be a national agency, a space agency, or a ministry, or a local agency, or a certain administration, or a city, to be there with all the competencies to be prepared to have the correct uptake of the user service. And this brings me to the next point, that it's very important that people locally have to be trained, and this is more on a long-term vision, that the various curricula, educational curricula at universities, the high school, technical schools, and so on, should train people to be ready for this user uptake, to make use of the benefits that is offered by space technologies. Next point is the collaboration. Coming from a very small country, Belgium, but we have a certain say within the European Space Agency. We knew upfront, Belgium was one of the founders of the European Space Agency, because we knew upfront that we were too small to be important or to be significant. So we said, let's join us with other countries. And I think this is the way to go ahead. So there should be collaboration, there should be partnership. And when I look on the African Space Union, I think this is the way to go. How it should be managed in government, that's another issue. But I think this is the only way to go. You can't only go with national space initiatives. They have their meaning. Sure. In general, I think we should work on collaboration and on enhancing partnerships. And then the last point, and I want to conclude with that if, and I think at the end, and I think we can agree on that the final beneficiary is the citizen, are we, all of us. And if the citizen has to pay for the services, then as well governments and public bodies should be prepared to pay for those services and not always ask that one specific end user should pay for this particular private company for that service. So there should be more support for elaborating on the use of the space services. So, Mr. Chairman, these are just a few points I want to share with you.
Very good, Dirk. Thank you very much. Now, there are lessons here. I suppose you speak to my point and question about, how do you ensure and improve knowledge and experience transfer between, member states and the African Union, because it would just change the tone, because you won't be teaching, you'd be helping people to understand that, this is what we did, this is how we learned. But also, when you think about the fact that in Europe, okay, we've got 1 to 2 million people within the divide, people don't have access. But when you've got half a continent that doesn't have access to the internet, the opportunities for improving education through smartphones, having data as a farmer to do something differently because that data will be available to you, etc. and so forth. Even in healthcare, it's amazing what, by having the satellite coverage over half of Africa, could really improve the livelihoods and life outcomes for millions. Especially, what we do know in Africa is the majority of the population is young. And it's the largest youth population in the world. And can you imagine what that would do if you had access to the internet in the other half? But thank you. Very well made points. And it just shows you what is possible. But I hope that you and people like yourselves and the companies that like yourselves can be brought into the conversation in the kind of either through the Africa-Europe Foundation or through the formal European Commission Africa channels for improving this conversation. Thank you. I'm going to move to Sékou, who's the founding president, African Aeronautics and Space Organization. Sékou, I want you to, if I may, we've called this session Building New Bridges between Africa and Europe for Space Exploration. In your mind, what are the top 3 to 4 things you think should happen?
President of institution and association, ladies and gentlemen, CEO of companies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with you this 20th of June 2022. I want to thank the Foundation Friends of Europe for having given me an opportunity to expose my point of view. The subject, building new bridges between Africa and Europe, is very interesting. I thought it was important to introduce you to the African Aeronautics Space Organization, AASO. Who are we? The African Aeronautics and Space Organization, AASO, is a non-profit association under the 1901 law created in 2015 by African scientists and decision makers. It is the result of the book I wrote in 2015, The African Space Agency Vector of Development, dedicated to me by the French astronaut, the General Jean-Louis Chrétien. He explained me that the state of space in Africa made him think of Europe's one in the 60s, with internal difficulties of positioning around its great nation and others less advanced. In 2015, I won the Space Book Prize at the Toulouse Aerospace Festival des Étoiles et des Ailes for this book. Journalists then asked me how to make my book come true, so I created a tool to convince Africans, and more particularly African political decision makers, to take into account the existence of these tools that are satellites, but also drones for the development of their respective countries. This is how the AASO was born in 2015, located in France for reasons of proximity to the scientific community of the French aeronautics and space field. We have representatives in Nigeria, Benin, Gabon, and Burkina Faso. Our honorary president is the French Directorate-General Jean-Louis Chrétien. The AASO primary purpose is to contribute to the development of aeronautics and space science in Africa. That means to facilitate regular consultation between industrials, institutions, and researchers in the aeronautics and space field in relation to the African continent. In addition, it coordinates actions based on satellite or aeronautical application for the benefit of the sustainable development of the African continent. We provide Africa awareness training for Westerns who want to work with African aerospace decision makers. In a second step, we promote and set up partnership development projects related to aeronautics and space science using local skills accompanied by those of the African diaspora. And finally, we promote the need to pool the resources of the African continent that contribute to its sustainable development. Concerning this aim, the creation of the African Space Agency is the most spectacular pooling to which we could imagine, especially since we know the 21st of October 2021 that this agency will have its own staff and its functional facilities. In 2022 in Addis Abeba, walls and staff. Congrats to Big Brother Tidiane for this achievement. Furthermore, we had just over 17 members and a dozen companies. Our followers on the various social media are over 1,000 today. We have participated in numerous solicitations in international newspapers, radio, and television media. I want to thank Tidiane Ouattara that by its skills and personal history represents himself a new way for accelerate the development of the space activity in Africa. Why? Because he comes from the African diaspora and became one of the main leaders of the African space politics as the space science expert at the African Union Commission. One of his initiatives was to pull together various national actors of the continent to make some brainstorming about potential space African initiatives. He invited me to participate as a representative of the African diaspora. I think it was because he knows that, like him, my own history, my skills, my experience abroad could bring something different to the brainstorming. Thanks to him, I met and created strong relationship with African space leaders for collaborations. From the European side, to use members of the African diaspora who knows the African cultural context for working on African space topic could improve the relationship as much into space private sectors as into the space public sectors. So, the first key which could build a new bridge between Africa and Europe for space exploration will be to reinforce the relationship between African space actors and African diaspora space actors of Europe and beyond. Last year, the French National Space Agency, the CNES, which organizes every 2 years the International Startup Context Act in Space, related to satellite data, asked us to organize it in Africa. We chose to organize it in Nigeria and Burkina Faso. In Nigeria, it was Nigeria Communication Satellite, NIGCOMSAT, who kindly helped us organize it locally, and it was a success. The final Nigeria team won the prize of the public. In Burkina Faso, the team representing Burkina Faso qualified for the international final and finished in the 6th international nation alongside nations such as France, Germany, Argentina, Estonia, and Australia. This experience has reinforced our conviction of the potential of the African countries to innovate in their areas despite the weakness of the national space ecosystems. All the country was proud of their young engineers. This kind of contest permits to the African youth to share with international experts as coach to reinforce their capabilities into the space business and their application. Now, a lot of African young researchers, entrepreneurs, scientists, policymakers know more about the importance of space application. This is the second key which could build a new bridge between Africa and Europe for space exploration. It will be to organize some events or contests to pull together European young entrepreneurs and young African entrepreneurs related to satellite data and their concrete application. Because I think that today we need to make better known the space application for the sustainable development of Africa. This on what we have to work together, Africa and Europe, put together young African and European space entrepreneurs. During the 5 last years, we have met a lot of different African and European space decision makers into the politics or into the industry. All explain me that there are some misunderstandings during their relationships. I think that this misunderstanding is due to largely cultural shifts. European people who are in front of African decision makers should know better the African cultural context today and tomorrow. This is why AASO decided to propose train European space decision makers to increase their effectiveness in relationship professional with African decision makers. So this is the third and the last key which could build a new bridge between Africa and Europe for space exploration. It is to help to give to European space actors some tools to know better the African cultural context today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know that you were really concerned because of, we both shared my lack of French and, your concern about the English, but that was brilliant. You did really well. Thank you very much. And also, what a lovely set of specific ideas. I want to have people react to that because, it seems kind of like a no-brainer. Let's connect the diaspora, especially the diaspora that's doing well in the area. Let's create a competition of entrepreneurs between the continents. And then, your challenging one, which I'm not sure how you're going to pull that one off, is improving the cultural capacity of leaders in Africa and in the EU. Whilst it's much needed, let's see. But any reactions to what you've heard just now, people? Guillaume.
I appreciate especially your last point of bringing the entrepreneurs and trying to work on Africa. Africa or anywhere else where there's the space business is not well developed because the expertise is not there. I think there's this missing point in the academic sector needs to develop this exchange thing that I said before, a way. I would love to actually work at a university in Nigeria or other places. I don't even see the way how to do it. And there is a lot of excess academics in Europe that we are fighting for very few positions that we would love to go there and work in Africa or in any other place in the world and actually help in building this ecosystem. Also building this academic, engineering, technical, local expertise, and then the entrepreneurs can come. Otherwise, they will not know how to hire the people that they need to build the machines, do the electronics engineering. So I think this is a very important point as well. Just wanted to push my part here.
No, Guillaume, as ever, you come up with fabulous ideas, and you think to yourself, it's such a brilliant idea. Why can't it just be made to happen? And if it fails in a year's time, so be it. But you've got the characters here in the room that I hope are listening, because that's a really good idea. You're right, especially when I think about my own my close experience in the UK, and I know the number of scientists and others who would be really keen to give up time or to be able to have that experience over in Africa. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's something that the British Council might want to think about from the UK perspective. But, when I'm thinking about the JRC here, we've got European Space Agency, we've got a number of partners. I hope you're listening. We'll, formulate this idea is really I think it has, well, listen to me, my arrogance, I think it has legs, and I'm not a scientist or a space technologist, but just in terms of policy change, the opportunity it could create is really quite phenomenal, and it's of a scale that's manageable. So I hope those of you who have influence and power or decision making, or be able to take notes back to business, people up the hierarchy, is a really good idea. I just want to bring back Olayinka. Are you still there? Have I lost her?
I'm here.
Hello. Thank you for
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can, absolutely. Olayinka, what do you think about this idea of creating this kind of knowledge exchange, expertise exchange, where you've got, and it's not just, as I repeat, this is not about a patronizing hand up kind of approach. This is about how do you transfer knowledge, experience and know-how, but also gain value, because expertise from, let's say, Europe and others will actually be able to offer something, but also gain something in return in terms of the experience, but also know-how of working in a different place. What's your reaction to that? Have you done something like this before?
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is one of the major area that the space agency in Nigeria has been, working on for the past couple of years, because we realize that we are very limited in terms of capacity, and to expand and to be able to do certain things, we needed that opportunity to develop capacity. And the way the agency has gone about this is by partnering with organizations from outside of Africa, from outside of Nigeria. And the approach that has been adopted in the past is by sending scientists and engineers to these places and have them go through whether training or conferences or workshop, or sometimes a specific need that the agency has. Then the agency looks for an organization or a company that has expertise in that field, and then send this mostly young and vibrant scientists and engineers. By the way, I'll be in Brussels on Wednesday, and I was looking forward to meeting some of the speakers, especially those ones that live in Belgium, because that's part of what we do. We look for opportunities where the agency can get this sort of transfer of knowledge, and we come back home to get working on such steps.
Great, Olayinka. So let me make the introduction. His name's Guillaume, and there's a gentleman over there called Alfredo, both for the European young leaders, and really up for coming over to Nigeria or providing a conversation. And there's an idea, and he said it publicly, so he has to kind of follow through. He didn't, but I'm just offering him up anyway. But he's a well-known architect, gosh. So here's an idea that could be made to grow. So if you're about, in the next, we'll make the connection. Because actually, at the end of the day, if a conference doesn't give birth to some activity, some ideas, what's the point of it? So there you go. You've made...
That'll be great.
Great, good.
That'll be great.
Excellent. Colleagues, I have taken up too much of your time. It's time to conclude. Unless there are any questions or burning ideas out there? No? Well, thank you all for being here at this stage. It is, for us, I hope you thought it was worthwhile your time. This was a risk that we took about 4 months ago, when I think I was saying to my team, I said, let's have a space summit. And they were like, they looked at me askance. But, I hope that we've been able to pull together as a team, as an organization, to provide you an alternative offering, I hope. And I hope that you've had access to perspectives and thoughts that you might not necessarily get elsewhere, but we're not trying to compete. We just want to make sure we're giving you independent, critical thought and asking the right questions, which is the most important thing in this space. And, we're really pleased that we were able to launch our brilliant study by Paul, but also have the other conversations throughout the day in our effort to make space matter. This program will continue. We have another couple of years to go, and we're hoping that, perhaps this might become an annual event. I don't know. Let's see, big change happens with small steps, doesn't it? So let's hope that we've taken that first step and take it from there. Thank you all very much. Thanks the online audience as well for being patient with us. And stay tuned on our website for our next set of activities. We've got quite an interesting lot before we close down for the summer, I can assure you. And thank you all for being here. Don't worry, there are drinks. There's drinks and there's a little cocktail for you. Not really a cocktail, it's wine, red wine and juice for you out there. So that to thank you for your efforts. And you could also go out into our lovely terrace. So, and that's generous. So thank you all very much. Thank you and take care.